Funding for this program is provided by the partners of Read North Dakota, our authors, our stories, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Louise Erdrich is an award-winning author of children's books, poetry, and novels, including The Plague of Doves, which was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. The oldest of 7 children, Louise was born in Little Falls, Minnesota, but grew up in Wahpeton, North Dakota, where her parents taught at the Bureau of Indian Affairs School. Louise is a graduate of Dartmouth College and earned a master's degree in creative writing from Johns Hopkins University. She is an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians and is the owner of the Birch Bark Bookstore in Minneapolis. Read North Dakota is proud to present A Conversation with Louise Erdrich. Welcome to A Conversation with the award-winning author, Louise Erdrich. I'm your host, Bob Dambach, and on the show, we'll talk to Louise about her career as a writer, the challenges of running an independent bookstore, and Louise will read some passages from her books. Thanks for joining us, Louise.
It's my pleasure, Bob. I'm glad to be here.
And we're delighted you're here. I'm sure when you were growing up, there was a lot of storytelling going on in your home.
Well, there was. My parents were both teachers. My father taught 6th grade for many years, and then 8th grade, and then he became a substitute teacher at Wahpeton High School. He was known as Super Sub. And part of his charm was that he is very good at telling a story on any subject you might imagine. My mother's side of the family is Turtle Mountain Chippewa, and her father was a magnificent storyteller. My mother also was herself. It's not that, people sit around and sort of formally come up with a story. It's more in the context of a typical family gathering where people have reminiscences and memories and maybe embroider a little and laugh on about certain parts of the family history. Or, as my father does, pick out certain local pieces of history and memorize them and tell them as stories.
You mentioned to me that he put little pieces of paper around your house with different words on it.
Yeah, he did. He was always teaching, and he's 87, so I'd like to say happy birthday to him. He's still teaching to this day. His grandchildren sit down with him and he opens the atlas up, or he starts talking on a subject that he has been reading about. So when we were little, he wanted to teach us different languages, and so we had French, little pieces of paper in French, Spanish, German, all over the house. We had different labels on everything that we could see.
And also, your mom and dad had some interesting ways of getting the kids to write.
Yes, they really wanted us to do what we felt comfortable with and to explore our own minds and to have an inner mental life, whether it be drawing or art or writing. And so my father used to pay me when I finished a story, and I would hand it over and he would give me a nickel. And for me, this is the time of having unlimited access to a small town. I could walk down to the nearest mom and pop grocery store and buy a great popsicle. And in Wahpeton, walking down on a hot sidewalk and getting your popsicle, it was worth it to become a writer. I decided right then, this was my calling.
That's wonderful. And what did your mom do?
My mother did everything with us. Well, my dad did things with us too, more in the terms of sports. He took us hunting. We would ski. We'd do all kinds of interesting. We ditch skied, which I'll get to later. Ditch skiing is probably a North Dakota sport people don't really know about in other parts of the country. But my mother would sit down with us, and for me, she would draw. She would teach me how to draw whatever I wanted to draw. Sewing, knitting, canning, every single thing that she knew how to do, she would take the time to teach the rest of us.
Now, I know you're very interested in your heritage. You're both your Native American heritage and then your white immigrant American heritage as well, and that shows up
Yes.
in your writing. But are you learning the Ojibwe language now?
I'm trying. It's a language that for some time was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most difficult. So I don't really fault myself for being such a terrible speaker, but I am also lazy. That's part of my... my daughter is studying it at a very serious level, and so I'm trying to renew my commitment to study the language as well.
Did your grandparents speak?
My grandfather spoke Ojibwe. He spoke the Red Lake dialect. And although he lived in the Turtle Mountains, his family had come over from Red Lake. So in addition to the language being a very intricate verb-based language, you know, our language, the English has nouns, nouns, nouns. We're a thing-oriented people. The Ojibwe are an action-oriented people. There are very few nouns, but many, many, many verbs which can be changed. Sometimes each verb will have so many as 100 different ways it can be used. So it's a difficult language to learn.
As you're learning that, as you've been learning it, has it changed the way you write at all, your prose at all?
I think it has. You know, working up to actually include an Ojibwe word changes the shape of the book, and there are now more and more Ojibwe words in the books. The children's book always includes a glossary and a pronunciation guide, and I go back to each book as I learn a little more, as I get closer to my teachers, and I revise the Ojibwe in the books. So they get changed all the time.
Well, you're quite a prolific author. You've written many novels, you've written children's books, as you just mentioned. You also write poetry. What we'd like you to do now is not write, but read for us. So if you could select, I think you have the Antelope Wife there, and
Yes.
you have something for us to listen to.
So this book, I'm delighted with this because I never thought I'd get a chance to go back and rework a book. And I reworked this book at a level that it's more than just revising, it's even more than just rewriting. I was able to reform and reshape the entire narrative to become something more of a story that I think was intended from the beginning. Now, when I asked my father, he said he wanted, I said, what should I read from this? And he said, read from the voice of the dog. So there's a dog in here. The dog is original dog, Wendigo dog. He's a res dog. But he's an ancient. He's an ancient creature, and he's the creature who really he feels has stood by the human race longer than any other animal and deserves a lot more respect than they get. And he's talking about now that he's talking to his fellow dogs, or in Ojibwe, Animoshag, and he's telling them how to survive. Survival rules for Animoshag. Animoshag, oh, my children, there are the slick and deadly wheels of reservation cars. Poisons occasionally set out for our weaker cousins, the mice and the rats. Not to speak of coyotes, the paw-snapping jaws of Ojibwe trapper steel, and we may well happen into the snares set as well for our enemies, lynx, marten, feral cats, bears, whom we worship. I learned early. Eat anything you can, anytime. Fast, bolt it down. Stay cute, but stay elusive. Don't let them think twice when they get the hatchet out. I see cold steel and I'm gone, believe it. And there are all sorts of illnesses we dread. Avoid the bite of the fox. It is madness. Avoid all bats. Avoid all black and white striped moving objects. And slow things with spiny quills. Avoid all humans when they get into a feasting mood. Get near the tables fast. Once the food is cooked, stay close to their feet. Stay ready. But Don't steal from their plates. Avoid medicine men, snakes, boys with BB guns, anything rope-like or easily used to hang or tie. Avoid outhouse holes. Cats that live indoors. Do not sleep under cars. Or with horses. Do not eat anything attached to a skinny, burning string. Do not eat lard from the table. Do not go into the house at all unless no one is watching. Do not, unless you are certain you can blame it on a cat, eat any of their chickens. Do not eat pies, decks of cards, plastic jugs, dry beans, or dish sponges. And if you must eat a shoe, eat both of the pair. Every scrap untraceable, always. When in doubt, the rule is you are better off underneath the house. Don't chase cars driven by young boys. Don't chase cars driven by old ladies. Don't growl or bark at men cradling rifles. Don't get wet in winter, and don't let yourself dry out when the hot winds of August blow. We're not equipped to sweat. Keep your mouth open. Visit the lake. Pee often. Take messages from tree stumps and the corners of buildings, and don't forget to leave in return a polite and respectful hello. You never know when it will come in handy. Your contact, your friend. You never know whom you will need to rely upon, which is how I come to the next story of my survival.
Did you have a dog growing up?
I always have had a dog. I still have a dog. This is about, and this is about as different a piece of the narrative. As you can see, this is about an antelope wife. She's a strange, mysterious woman who is connected with this dog since time began, really. But she's someone who, a man in Minneapolis falls in love with her out in Montana. He really kidnaps her, and he brings her home, and she proceeds to destroy his life. And it's only the dog who brings back sanity into their relationship and allows everyone to go on.
What was it about this book that made you want to retake this book, take it on once again?
Well, I had 30 good pages, 30 really good pages. And after that, it fell apart. I could just tell the chaos started, and some of the voice was okay, but I couldn't get the narrative to really connect. So I snipped it and scrapped it and threw it away and took it back and finally made it into a new book. And now it's really a new book.
You seem delighted with it.
I am. I really am. It's so satisfying to be able to do that.
Well, one of the other hats you wear is that you and your sister have a bookstore, and this is a really tough time, I would think, to have a bookstore.
Yeah.
But tell us about your bookstore.
The bookstore is called Birchbark Books, and well, maybe it would be obvious, but we have our dogs often suggest what books to read. They have their own blog on our website, and they tell about their reading habits. And we have a wonderful collection of people who really run this bookstore. If I was there every day, I'd never get to write. So we have just terrific people who work there every day and pick out books that they really hope people are going to like. This is something that I think is really essential in this, in our society, is to have a place where you can go, where you can talk about books, and where you can look at the books and touch the books and pick them up and look into them, where the person who's suggesting a book actually knows you and is not an algorithm on a computer. What you usually get if you're on Amazon is you get, you like this book, algorithm, here, you might like this book. Well, how are you ever really going to discover a new book that way? In a small bookstore, there's just something, I think, that's so human and necessary about the interchange that people have. So that's why I've always, I didn't grow up with a bookstore in Wahpeton. There's a wonderful one now there called Bookhaven, and we have Zambros here, another wonderful bookstore. But really, the small bookstore, I think, is a little oasis of humanity. It's a little outpost in this big box world where people can really go and talk about what they love in literature and what it is about literature that's truly important to them, and get ideas from other people about what might be good to read.
You enjoy William Faulkner. Why don't you tell us about your relationship with the writing of Faulkner?
Well, you know, I remember my first, I still have the first Faulkner I picked up. They're old paperbacks, you know, from the Cambridge bookstore in Harvard Square. And I still read them. I'll go back and read them every so often. I don't know if I have a more, a longer relationship with Faulkner than with any other writer, or if it's more important, because a lot of the books get compared with Faulkner's, but I think it's more because they concentrate on one group of people and they elaborate on the connections between people. But I actually think our writing is very different, and in terms of writing, some of my heroes are Virginia Woolf, Isak Dinesen. I love Toni Morrison's writing. I like W.G. Zabel's writing. You know, I have different writing stylists I would say are more important to me than Faulkner. But what I love about him is his sense of connection and his sense of the endurance of the greatest part of the human is the endurance. His willingness to talk about women as people of valor and courage. So I do love Faulkner. I don't say that he's the only influence, though.
Could you read something else for us again? I think you have something from your newest book.
Oh, sure. This book, The Roundhouse, is the newest book that's coming out, and it's not going to look like this. Mm-hmm. It has a different cover entirely. I don't know why, but it does. This is not my decision, exactly. But I will just read a bit of the beginning of The Roundhouse. The Roundhouse, I'll explain first, is a tribal setting for dances and ceremonies. So this roundhouse is a place where I put myself imaginatively, and I'm thinking of one roundhouse in particular, but I've been in many. But it's the roundhouse is the gathering place for the spirit, and in this book, it's violated by an act of desperate cruelty. And the year is 1988. The boy who's speaking is named Joe. He's 13. And this book answers one simple question. How will this boy save his mother? How will he save her? And is it his job? That's not even the question after a while. He's the only one who can save her and who can bring her attacker to justice. And how is he going to do that? So that's what this book is about. We backed down the gravel drive, circled the empty parking lot of the tribal enrollment office. Empty, windows dark. As we came back out the entrance, we turned right. She went to hoop dance, I'll bet, said my father. She needed something for dinner, so maybe she was going to surprise us, Joe. I'm the second Anton Basil Coutts, but I'd fight anyone who put a junior in back of my name or a number or called me Basil. I decided I was Joe when I was 6. But even then, I saw myself as different, though I didn't know how yet. Tamping down my anxiety as we went looking for my mother, who had gone to the grocery store, just that, surely, a little errand. I was aware that what was happening was in the nature of something that was unusual. A missing mother. A thing that didn't happen to the son of a judge, even one who lived on a reservation. In a vague way, I hoped something was going to happen. I was the sort of kid who'd spend a Sunday afternoon prying little trees out of the foundation of his parents' house, so I should have given in to the inevitable truth that this was the sort of person I would become. Yet, when I say I wanted there to be something. I meant nothing bad. A rare occurrence, a sighting, a bingo win, though this was Sunday and not a bingo day. Halfway to Hoop Dance, it occurred to me that the grocery store was closed on Sunday. Oh, of course it is. My father's chin jutted, his hands tightened on the wheel. He had a profile that would look Indian on a movie poster, Roman on a coin. There was a classic stoicism in his heavy beak and jaw. He kept driving because he said she might have forgotten it was Sunday too, which was when we passed her. There, she whizzed by us in the other lane, riveted, driving over the speed limit, anxious to get back home to us. But here we were. We laughed at her set face as we did a U-turn there in the highway and followed her, eating her dust. She's mad, my father laughed, so relieved. See, I told you. She forgot. Went to the grocery and forgot it was closed. Mad now she wasted gas. Oh, Geraldine. There was amusement, adoration, amazement in his voice when he said those words, oh, Geraldine. Just from those two words, it was clear that he was and always had been in love with my mother. He had never stopped being grateful that she had married him, and right afterward given him a son when he'd come to believe he was the end of the line. Ah, Geraldine. He shook his head, smiling as we drove along, and everything was all right, more than all right. We could now admit we'd been worried by my mother's uncharacteristic absence, so it was our turn then to worry her just a little, let her in for a taste of her own medicine. So we took our time walking up the hill, this time anticipating my mother's indignant question, where were you? I could just see her hands knuckled at her hip, her smile twitching to jump from behind her frown. She'd laugh when she heard the story. We walked up the dirt drive. Alongside it in a strict row, Mom had planted the pansy seedlings she'd grown in paper milk cartons. She'd put them out early, the only flower that could stand a frost. As we came up the drive, we saw she was still in the car, sitting in the driver's seat, before the blank wall of the garage door. My father started running, and I could see it too in the set of her body, something fixed, rigid, wrong. When he got to her car, he opened the driver's side door. Her hands were clenched on the wheel, and she was staring blindly ahead, as she had been when we passed her going the opposite way on the road to Hoop Dance. We'd seen her intent stare, and we'd laughed then. She's mad at the wasted gas. I was just behind my father, careful even then to step over the scalloped pansy leaves and buds. He put his hands on hers and carefully pried her fingers off the steering wheel. Cradling her elbows, he lifted her from the car and supported her as she shifted toward him, still bent in the shape of the car seat. She slumped against him, stared past me. There was vomit down the front of her dress and soaking her skirt and soaking the gray cloth of the car seat, her dark blood. Go down to Clement, said my father. Go down and say I am taking your mother straight to Hoop Dance emergency, and tell them to follow. With one hand, he opened the door to the back seat, and then, as though they were dancing in some awful way, he maneuvered Mom to the edge of the seat and very slowly laid her back. He helped her turn over to the side. She was silent, though now she moistened her cracked, bleeding lips with the tip of her tongue. I saw her blink, a little frown. Her face was beginning to swell. I went around the other side and got in with her. I lifted her head and slid my leg underneath. I sat with her, holding my arm over her shoulder. She vibrated with a steady shudder, like a switch had been flipped inside. A strong smell rose from her. Something else, like gas or kerosene. I'll drop you off down there, my father said, backing out, car tires screeching. No, I'm coming too. I've got to hold on to her. Dad, we'll call from the hospital. I had almost never, challenged my father in word or deed, but it didn't even register between us. There had been that look, odd, as if between two grown men, and I had not been ready, which didn't matter. I was holding my mother tightly now in the back seat of the car. Her blood was on me. I reached onto the back window ledge and pulled down an old plaid quilt we kept there. She was shaking so bad I was scared she would fly apart. "Hurry, Dad." "All right," he said. And then we flew there. He had the car up past 90. We just flew.
Thank you, Louise. You read as well as you write. That's wonderful. We want to thank you for joining us with this conversation with Louise Erdrich, and we want to thank you for coming here, Louise.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this Read North Dakota presentation of a conversation with Louise Erdrich. If you'd like to learn more about Read North Dakota activities, you can visit us at readnd.org.
Funding for this program is provided by the Partners of Read North Dakota, our authors, our stories, and by the members of Prairie Public.